Good morning. Pope Francis died recently, and then his funeral occurred. So now the cardinals can go into a conclave, which is an assembly of cardinals, to elect a new pope. And they are secluded there during this. Um, According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, the term conclave comes from the Latin phrase cum clave, meaning with a key. Papal succession has evolved a lot over the time. Currently, the current procedure for electing the Pope is relatively simple compared to how it could be. You get the papal conclave together. Anybody under the age of 80 who's a cardinal can vote, and then if you get a although you have to, the last conclave was when Pope Francis was elected. Um, Pope Francis died on the 21st, so a week ago, actually. Yeah, it was a week ago. Um, they do have to have a oath of secrecy, which I think is very interesting because that allows the idea of who's going to be pope to be speculated on. And unfortunately, that in the modern times has led to things like sports books being like, here are the odds of who's going to be the next pope. And then the Catholic Church excommunicated a bunch of people for doing that because yeah. One ballot on the first day and then up to four on each subsequent day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. Each elector just chooses who they want, and recorded, threaded together for security, and later burned. And of course, we all know about the different types of smoke. A 2/3 majority is required. So if there's 100 people voting, you have to have 67. White smoke goes through the chapel's roof. Black smoke signals the conclave did not reach a majority that day. And then the senior cardinal decision announces the new pope from the beacon of St. Peter's Basilica. Now, something interesting here is that this is an election, right? Now, the Pope is the head of state of Vatican City. The Pope is a monarch. He has 100% control over everything that happens in Vatican City, all the rules, laws, everything like that. But he's elected. He doesn't just get to say, I am Pope. Now, in the past, there were people who did say that. That led to a whole thing with popes, anti-popes, all that stuff. Wasn't good. We had a lot of problems in the early papacy. And just by doing it this way, it ensures that the person who is Pope has at least 66 and 2/3% of the vote to be Pope. That's why it's got to be 67 out of 100. It's interesting to me that the Pope is a monarch and a head of a religious institution, as there are two monarchs that do that. That's himself and the monarch of England in the United Kingdom, because they're the head of the Church of England, which is quite important. The Archbishop of Canterbury is the second in command of that. The monarch is actually in charge of the religion, which is useful in terms of if you're a monarch and you want to have a state religion. The Vatican, of course, has a state religion, as it's literally the Church's country. But aside from that, I think it's really cool. Now, I don't have any idea who's going to be the next pope. I don't follow this as closely as I did when JP2 died. When JP2 died, I was a Catholic in Catholic school. We followed that really closely. And then there was obviously Pope Benedict, who died a little while ago. He was Pope Emeritus for a little while, and then there's Pope Francis. I don't know who the next Pope will be. I don't know what we're going to see from the Catholic Church, but I have heard that Pope Francis appointed about 80 or 90 cardinals who are eligible to vote. So I have a feeling that whoever the next pope is will be very progressive and much in the vein of Pope Francis, which I think is kind of cool. But I also think it shows the issues with an elected monarch. The monarch is elected, but yeah, he just gets to appoint people who are like him, and then his view's there forever. Which, if you have a regular democracy, it's different, where, you have George Washington, Abe Lincoln, Donald Trump, all of them have different viewpoints on things. And that's useful because they reflect a lot of the viewpoints of the people at the time. Whereas the Catholic Church, over the course of the last 2,000 years, has not necessarily always reflected the views of the broader society. I think it's going to be cool to have the Pope, the papal conclave. I'm going to be paying attention to it over the course of some things. I'm hoping that the next Pope doesn't decide that his first trip will be to meet J.D. Vance. It would be cool if the next Pope did come to the United States, but I don't know if that'll happen. It would be really cool if the Pope came to the United Nations and gave a speech on peace and love, and all that stuff with Jesus from the Bible. All of those things. Maybe just did the Sermon on the Mount in the United Nations. That would be epic. Or in the White House. That would be pretty epic. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and this has been some random thoughts on the new Pope.